Donald Trump is obsessed with the past. He can never move on from talking about and really just attacking those who he thinks have wronged him. And that includes any political opponent he has ever had. And of course, that means Kamala Harris and President Joe Biden. And in an interview with Bret Baier, newly released part of this interview, we saw just how much they occupy his mind, specifically Vice President Kamala Harris, who has been doing nothing but engaging with and supporting her community in Los Angeles since leaving the White House. Yet still, that is causing Donald Trump to lose his mind, specifically when the 2024 election was brought up and the successes of Kamala Harris. He melted down. It was an absolute mess. She clearly triggered him into this meltdown, and we're going to get into it all. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way. It really does mean a lot to me. Now, before we get into Trump's meltdown over Kamala Harris, I want to see what our VP is up to, supporting her community, unlike Donald Trump, who is doing everything he can to destroy our country. And then we'll get into the Trump tantrum.
Vice President Kamala Harris making her first public appearance in weeks today, and I caught up with her in both Pacific Palisades and Westwood.
During the height of fear, you are fearless.
Former Vice President Kamala Harris thanks first responders and surveys fire damage in Pacific Palisades for the first time. What goes through your mind when you see this? You're here, you're now seeing it up close.
It's not only seeing it, Alex, you can smell it. You can feel it, right? So it's seeing it with our eyes, and many people have seen it. You all are covering it. But to literally be on the ground here, you can smell the smoke that was here. You can feel the toxicity, frankly, of the environment. You can feel the energy of all of the folks who are still here on the ground.
Resident Jamie Longo in tears seeing Harris in her community.
The fact that she would come down to our community and see the devastation, it means everything.
LA County Supervisor Lindsay Horvath giving the tour and expressing gratitude for the Biden-Harris administration immediately approving federal disaster aid without conditions.
You personally called, you've been personally attentive to what's happening on the ground from the moment this started.
One of the things they wanted the former vice president to see is this burnt-out mobile home, evidence that there's a lot of different kinds of properties that burned.
As we think about the future, we must, as a society, as a country, invest in adaptation and resilience, and we have to understand these extreme weather occurrences are extreme, but they are increasingly less rare.
Harris also visiting the Westwood Recreation Center, a temporary home for fire evacuees. There, she's asked directly, are you running for California governor?
I have been home for 2 weeks and 3 days. My plans are to be in touch with my community, to be in touch with the leaders and figure out what I can do to support them.
Does seeing this change the way you think about the question of whether to run for governor?
I am here and would be here regardless of the office I hold, because it is the right thing to do, which is to show up in your community and thank the folks who are on the ground.
On Inauguration Day, Kamala Harris had a chance to speak with incoming VP J.D. Vance and incoming President Donald Trump. Trump about this. A Harris advisor tells me Trump and Harris have spoken multiple times behind the scenes about California wildfires, with the former vice president stressing the need to fully fund disaster relief efforts without conditions, as every president has done before. Harris has not weighed in publicly on Trump's performance as president so far, while privately she's contemplating her own future. Are you ready to support her for governor?
If she's running, I'm interested to know that. I know that there are certainly a lot of stories out there, but I think she has a lot of support here.
It's difficult to watch that. It is difficult to see someone out of public life, out of public office, who could be kicking her feet up right now, hanging by the pool, lounging, just kicking back, maybe throwing like a martini. I don't know. Kamala Harris could be enjoying herself right now, but she's in her community. She's focused on service. That's been her entire life. That is what she's devoted to. Well, Donald Trump is still pushing crypto scams as president and allowing Elon Musk to funnel billions of dollars away from people who need it at home and abroad and into his pockets. the what could have been versus what is pretty stark. And it's pretty upsetting and disappointing. And a reminder of why we need to fight back so much. Because there is the potential to have, in 2028 at least, Kamala Harris again, but people who actually care about service leading our government in just 2 years. And apparently that is really sticking in the back of Donald Trump's mind, because when he was asked about the 2024 election, actually, you'll just see.
They really do. You won the popular vote. You won all the swing states. But still, Kamala Harris got 75 million votes in the country.
Well, if you believe the whole thing.
Yeah, okay. Let's just say
it is ridiculous.
That the election was as it was.
Excuse me. There are 7 swing states. I won them all.
You did
by a lot.
But let me just get to the dismount here.
And I won the popular
Have
vote.
you thought about how to try to bring the country together, to reach out or to find common ground? Have you thought about that? Or
He is still so angry. I think about that debate. I think that is the thing in his entire political career, even more than the 2020 election. That's just the thorn in his side that he can't get out. The way that she shredded him, humiliated him in that debate. Trump will never be able to get over it. We talked about it on the night that it happened and the days following. At a certain point, I think it was about 5 minutes in, he couldn't even look at her anymore. Kamala Harris, shoulders back, walked up to him, shook his hand, and then crushed him in front of 60 million people. Couldn't even make eye contact. And he's still so caught up in it, saying that there was fraud in the election that he won. Can he not just have any faith in our system? It's like, does he have to attack it no matter what? He didn't win by enough. But that is exposing an element of Trump that is very clear in this presidency. He knows he's weak. It's why he's acting in such criminal and corrupt ways, because he's trying to bolster power he knows he doesn't really have. It's why he's so caught up in the past. What made him look weak? Just listen to what he said right here.
In my first term, when we hit that number, and I mean the day before I heard the word COVID or pandemic, they told me, sir, I think there's a pandemic. That was not a good thing. I said, tell me about pandemics. But the day before we hit that word, I had a meeting with political people and pollsters and everything else, and they said, sir, if George Washington and Abraham Lincoln got together and ran as president and vice president, they couldn't beat you.
Trump wants to push this idyllic version of himself in which he was the most popular president ever with such a great agenda. He was bringing down costs, as President Obama always said. It was actually just Trump inheriting his economy. But he wants to keep that idea in people's minds so they don't realize things are already getting substantially worse under Donald Trump. We're about 4 weeks into this thing, and there are already problems because of him. He doesn't want that in people's minds. No. He wants them to be focusing on some idea of what his presidency was. And that's always what it is with Trump and Republicans. If, could have, would have, should have. They love their hypotheticals because it means they don't actually have to do anything. Like, listen to Trump right here.
Putin, do you squeeze him to get him to the table? I mean, how do you...
It would have, look, I say it all the time, this would have never happened if I were president. If the election weren't rigged, this would have never happened. And let's see whether or not Fox lets you put that in, okay? If the election weren't rigged, do you hear me, rigged? Let's see, I mean, this would have never happened. It wouldn't happen with Putin, and October 7th would have never happened either.
So, Donald, it's interesting because you say if you were president 2020, in 2021 and 2022, there would be no war in Ukraine. But I also remember you saying before you were going to be sworn in, it would already be resolved. Now, I assumed that meant you were just going to hand over as much land as possible to Putin. But you can't even accomplish that. I don't know what he's planning, but really what it signals to me, and what we've already seen in some reporting and some action from Vladimir Putin, is he thinks Donald Trump is so weak, so malleable, that he can really just get him to do whatever he wants, that isn't even enough for Putin, which is a scary thought. But you see the way that Trump has attacked foreign aid, the way that him and Elon want to get rid of USAID. It would make sense that dictators that know Donald Trump is very easily swayed, won over, that you should wait it out a little bit. That our power abroad is probably going to crumble bit by bit because of Donald Trump. And then they're going to seize on that through, I don't know, It could be flattery. It could also be dumping billions of dollars into one of his crypto scams, if that's what he's all about. We just saw a law repealed barring bribes to businesses from foreign entities. It's out of control. And that's what we expect to happen. Again, this is all Trump trying to secure his power. And that became very clear with this right here.
Do you view Vice President J.D. Vance as your successor, the Republican nominee in 2028?
No, but he's very capable.
Imagine being J.D. Vance. You have sold every bit of your soul, any morals you might have ever had. You just threw your wife and kids under the bus to endorse a kid promoting racism against Indians in Doge. And Donald Trump goes, I don't like that JD guy. Imagine how embarrassing that is. And deserved. Because he's a spineless little bowl of jelly. He's whatever Donald Trump wants him to be. J.D. Vance is so unimportant to this administration. All he does is spend his time tweeting. You're the vice president. You can't get anything done. You don't have plans. You just whine on the internet. Yeah, that's pretty much J.D. But maybe this isn't just a kind of a knock at him. It's also, again, Trump trying to solidify his power that he knows he really doesn't have. That's why he's always whining and complaining. Listen to him right here.
The Canadian citizens would have a much lower tax rate. They'd have much better medical, and they'd have military protection like nobody can have. You know, you have Russian ships all over the place. You have Chinese ships all over the place. They're sailing all over Canada. They're sailing right next to Greenland. We're not going to let that happen to Greenland. They're sailing all over, and we're going to stop that. But if you're a Canadian and you pay much lower taxes, you have much better military protection. You know, Canada is in default in NATO. I mean, they pay the lowest number of any country for NATO. And it's not fair. You know why they do that? Because they think America is going to protect them automatically. We can't do that anymore. But as a state, it all works great. As another country, I'm not going to do it. Now, what's going to happen, if I take away the subsidy, Canada really ceases to become a viable nation.
This is what it is all about. If he can create enough political hay, if he can distract, we won't focus on his failures. He can paint this idyllic picture of his presidency. He can pretend that costs are going down. He can pretend that tariffs are successful. He can pretend that they're trimming the fat in government, when in fact, they're actually just fattening it up to give Elon a giant tax cut that Donald Trump can't pay for. Doesn't really care about that. This is what he's trying to do. This is what it's all about. And it's what we have to call out every single day. And we're going to on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.